You've probably heard the story, right? That the US labor market is strong, it's resilient, but, well, the data we're about to dig into paints a very, very different picture. There's something happening just beneath the surface, a pretty big and honestly dangerous disconnect. So let's get right into it. Let's just start with this number, 1,099,000. That's how many layoffs have been announced in the US just this year. Now, our source points out that this is the kind of number you expect to see in a really deep recession, not a supposedly healthy economy. And you know what? This is just the tip of the iceberg. And this quote, man, it just gets right to the heart of the whole thing. It perfectly frames the problem we're exploring today. This massive gap between the official story we're being told and what the raw data is screaming at us. It shows a system that's under some serious strain. All right, so this brings us to our first big idea, this tale of two economies. We're not just talking about a couple of troubled companies here and there. No, the data is showing a widespread contraction, and it's starting to affect pretty much everyone. The source is really clear on this point. This isn't some gentle cooling off or a soft landing. It's a rapid deterioration. And what's wild is the historical context here. I mean, we haven't seen things fall apart this fast in over 2 decades. That tells you that something fundamentally different is happening right now. And this just lays it all out so clearly. Just look at this breakdown. It's not just the tech sector getting hammered with 141,000 cuts. It's warehousing, it's retail, it's services. Even the government is cutting jobs, which almost never happens. This is what the source calls a synchronized contraction. And believe me, that is a major red flag. Okay, but layoffs? That's only half the story. There's this whole other, quieter crisis happening that's just as damaging. Let's call it the Great Hiring Freeze. It's not just that companies are cutting jobs, they've basically stopped creating new ones. Think about what this means. It's a massive loss of forward momentum. When companies stop even planning to hire, it shows a deep collapse in business confidence. They're not gearing up for growth, they're hunkering down for a storm. The engine of job creation? It's seriously sputtering out. Now, you might have seen headlines about some big hiring surge back in October. Well, this slide breaks that number down. See, of the 283,000 hiring announcements, almost all of them, 250,000, came from one single thing: Amazon hiring temporary workers for the holidays. You take that one single outlier away, and the source says hiring would have been the absolute worst it's been in 10 years. And all of this has pushed us past a really critical tipping point. For the very first time since the pandemic, there are now officially more people looking for work than there are jobs available. The power has completely shifted. We now have an employment deficit, and a recession hasn't even been declared yet. So what in the world is causing all this? Why is this happening? We're going to look at what the source calls the 3 major cracks in the foundation, the core issues that are forcing companies to make these really drastic cuts. It really boils down to 3 big forces creating a kind of perfect storm. First, you've got incredible financial strain on companies. Second, the crazy fast acceleration of AI. And third, the American consumer is just running out of steam. So let's break those down. Let's start with the corporate strain. This number, that's the mountain of corporate debt in the US. And as interest rates go up, the cost to just pay the interest on that debt is skyrocketing. It's forcing companies into what the source calls triage mode. And what's the first and biggest expense they can cut? Yup, payroll. The second force is AI, which our source calls a labor market accelerant. And here's the thing, it's not just replacing existing administrative and analytical jobs at lightning speed. The really crucial point is that it's also preventing future jobs from ever being created in the first place, permanently pushing down the demand for new hires. And the third crack in the foundation is the consumer. This is the staggering amount of credit card debt we're all carrying. Our savings are gone, debt is soaring, so what happens? People are forced to spend less. That means less revenue for companies, which squeezes their finances even more. And it creates this vicious cycle that leads directly back to more layoffs. Okay, so these are huge, kind of abstract numbers, but behind every single one of them is a very real and painful human cost. So let's shift focus for a minute and talk about what this is actually doing to American workers right now. 24.5 weeks. Just think about that. That's the average amount of time a displaced American worker now spends unemployed. That's almost 6 months with no steady paycheck, no stability, probably no health insurance, just trying to find a new job in a market that's actively shrinking. And for a lot of people, that surge is lasting even longer. We're talking nearly 2 million Americans who are now considered long-term unemployed. And historically, that is a very, very dangerous sign. Once this number starts to climb, it causes lasting economic scarring, and it can take years, sometimes even a decade, to fix. And this crisis goes way beyond just the people who've lost their jobs. It creates this climate of constant fear and anxiety for everybody. I mean, even if you have a job, you're living with this stress that your job could be next. This insecurity just leads to burnout, frustration, and a workforce that is just plain emotionally exhausted. So when you put all of this together, what do you get? Well, the source argues that these factors are creating a self-reinforcing downturn. They're locking the economy into a trajectory that's becoming pretty much undeniable. So here's how this feedback loop really works. It's often called the multiplier effect. Every single lost paycheck means less money being spent at local businesses. That drop in revenue forces those businesses to cut their own staff, which then creates a whole new wave of lost paychecks. The job market isn't absorbing shocks anymore. It's making them bigger. And this quote from the source just hits the nail on the head. It's not about one single problem. It's about all of these interconnected pressures that are now feeding off of each other, creating a downward spiral that is just gaining more and more momentum. And so we end here. According to all this data, the labor market is falling apart way faster than the official story would have you believe. The source claims the whole system is hitting its limits. So the question it leaves us with isn't if things will get worse, but just how much worse they're going to get. It's a sobering thought, for sure, and a powerful reminder to stay aware in what's becoming a very new and very different economic reality.